What's up, everybody? How's it going? And welcome to another edition of the Cream City Cast, presented to you by the Shepherd Express and John E. Drain Realtor with Realty Executives Integrity. If you're looking to buy a house or condo in the Milwaukee area, check him out at Facebook or at his website, johnedrainrealtor.com. I'm here joined once again and always with Andrew Goodman. We're fresh off of our All-Star break and fresh off of two recent Bucks games against the Pelicans, a loss against the Pelicans, but an impressive win against Toronto. Andrew, what's up, man?
Dylan, always good to be back with you here, man. Like you said, had a great win at Toronto to give the Raptors their only fifth loss at the Air Canada Center in a 122-119 overtime win. And we all know how great Giannis Antetokounmpo played with 26 points, 12 rebounds, 6 assists, 2 steals, 1 block in 45 minutes, and really what was a heroic effort. But the underlining factor to me in that game was the fact that Jason Terry came off the bench, gave him 14 points, and went 4 or 5 from 3. And he was out there in crunch time in the fourth quarter and overtime, and I thought he did a great job on both sides of the ball, specifically defensively. I thought his communication and defensive rotations were excellent, to say the least. And on offense, he was great just spotting up in the corner. You know, he made that big corner three when it looked like Toronto was going to run away with it in overtime off of that ridiculous Giannis save. And then he also came around next possession to give an extra pass to Chris Middleton, find him open for a three-pointer to tie the game, which is when the Bucks really went on to capitalize and win the game. So, you know, furthermore, the three-headed monster of Middleton, Giannis, and Bledsoe, they combined for 68 points, 23 rebounds, and 15 assists. And when all three of them are clicking like that, it's very hard to beat. And that game is a glimpse of how well the Bucks can match up against the top teams in the East when that three-headed monster comes to play.
Absolutely. And, you know, having a marquee win right off of the All-Star break really set the tone for what expectations are for the second half of the season and going into the playoffs for Milwaukee. And they're doing this, mind you, with Jason Terry getting a lot of minutes. I mean, when Malcolm Brogdon comes back, it's going to be a whole nother attribute that we can have on our roster, because Jason Terry is obviously, he played very well, 14 points in the win against Toronto, 4 or 5 from 3. That's all he shot. He didn't take any twos on the night. But him filling in that role until Malcolm is back is really kind of the stopgap that we need. And I look at the Toronto game and I look at what stands out for me in the score sheet, and it's that second quarter. I was winning the quarter by 14 points, 42-28, a real offensive kind of bombshell for the Bucks that quarter. It really just shows how well they can play at sometimes against really good teams, and it kind of backs up our ongoing theory that we've had on this podcast of them playing to their competition, which I don't even know if it's a theory anymore.
I know it might actually be a fact because, you know, it looked like the Bucks were shaping up to be in pretty good shape. You have this great win at Toronto, and you're looking ahead to yesterday's performance against the Pelicans. They're without Anthony Davis, or excuse me, not Anthony Davis, without DeMarcus Cousins. So, you know, you're thinking, oh, the Bucks, it's a home game. They should win that game. But, you know, rule number 1, never trust the Bucks.
Nope. Like the girl that broke your heart. The Bucks get you very excited, but it's just a terrible, terrible demise. And like you said, it was a tough game yesterday against the Pelicans, and it's kind of one of those games that you're going to look back in the season and say, wow, we really, if it gets to the point where we miss a spot by a couple games or something like that, like the 4 seed, this is one that we definitely should have had yesterday, as we lost 123-121 to the Pelicans, as it really wasn't a typical Anthony Davis night, only with 27 and 13. Mind you, I said only 27 and 13, but it was really the Drew Holiday show, as he shot the ball 31 times to get his 36 points with 9 total rebounds and 6 assists. The guard were not playing that great on Drew Holiday defensively. He was backing him down a lot, and kind of just sucking the air out of a building that really had great energy all day, as I was there yesterday.
Yeah, it looked like things were going well. The Bucks, I believe they went up to a 17-point lead at halftime. You're thinking, all right, going to be another getaway game for the Bucks, get the starters some rest. they'll be looking good for their next game against the Wizards, which is tomorrow. But then again, they came out flat, completely flat in the third quarter. And I think it only took about 4 or 5 minutes for the Pelicans to erase a 17-point deficit and to basically tie the game. So that was really scary to see the Bucks to come out that flat and really with no sense of urgency. But for me, what my takeaway is for that game is the Pelicans were just hitting a bevy of tough shots, man. The Bucks were D'ing up on some of those possessions, and then you have Rajon Rondo coming in, banking in a three-pointer as the shot clock's winding down, which really just, summarized the Bucks game yesterday.
No, you're right. It was a weird game in that the matinee start yesterday at 2 o'clock, which I actually liked quite a bit. It's nice having the whole day after you. It was a good energy last night downtown. And then, get your weekly update if you go to the games as often as I do to see the new stadium coming up. So that was awesome. And yeah, it was just kind of, I left the stadium kind of in shock that we lost up 17 at halftime. And we actually avoided what was, I thought, would be one of the big difference makers in the Pelicans lineup yesterday was Mirotic, who seemingly always has a big game in Milwaukee. He only went 5 of 15 from the floor with 1 of 8 from 3. So I thought we dodged a bullet there. So I'm, Drew Holiday's 36 points is really kind of where it comes and goes. And you just got to kind of have a stopper at that point. And that, that's where I look to Eric Bledsoe kind of. He always was, when we got him, he was known as the really good defensive player. I mean, I understand his knees are not necessarily the best, but I don't know. I think the guards kind of let down on that one, especially on the defensive end.
Yeah, definitely. Drew Holiday was just eating whoever was put in front of him alive. But then, if you just have Malcolm Brogdon or Dellavedova, one of the two, this is definitely a game that the Bucks win. Yeah, for sure. So I think we need to dial it back a little bit. This is a bad loss in terms of, where we are in the season, but we have to realize the Bucks are down two big, pretty bench players, But for me, Tony Snell, becoming very, very annoyed with Tony Snell and his lack of ability to do really anything offensively. We know he's a scrapper on defense and he's great on that end, but to what extent are the Bucks willing to just keep throwing him out there if he's continuing to just give you nothing offensively?
Yep, and especially I was very upset at the game yesterday, especially in the overtime period when who had 18 points last night, Jabari Parker was sitting on the bench at the end of the game while Tony Snell was out there seemingly just kind of as the Pelicans were dummying him kind of on defense and really showing a lot of help on Giannis and Middleton and really all of the drives they tried to get in that overtime period and even somewhat in the fourth quarter. I really question that decision by Prunty, and this is probably one of the first really big decisions that I've had to question with him since he's become the interim head coach. So I would have liked to seen Jabari there. I understand he played his season high in minutes yesterday also with 24 minutes. So I get that they're still trying to be a little careful at that. But this was kind of a big game, and I think it was almost a must win. Should have won at least. So, I mean, kind of what, Andrew, give me your thoughts a little bit about what you think went into that decision of sitting Jabari in the overtime period.
Well, 24 minutes he played, I believe that's a season high for sure.
Yeah, it is.
The minutes restriction definitely has something to do with why he didn't play in overtime. But Jabari was really one of the only Bucks besides Chris Middleton or Eric Bledsoe for spurts that really had anything going offensively. He was looking to get to the basket. He was very aggressive, even shot 2 of 3 from 3-point range, which was nice. He did show a little rust, but of course that's going to be completely normal for a player coming off of his second torn ACL. But there's no difference that there's no excuse me. Can you cut that out?
Mm-hmm.
There's really no reason as to why, Jabari, you think Jabari wouldn't make an impact in overtime, and of course with Tony Snell, 9 points, 6 turnovers, 4 of 9 from the floor, 1 of 3 from deep. You would have definitely loved to see Jabari in there instead of Tony Snell, but got to question if it's the minutes restriction or what's going on there. If Prunty didn't like the matchups that he was seeing or something.
Yeah. When I was watching the game yesterday, I really just the reason why I think Jabari is just such a good asset going forward, and if they can get him for the right price, I would be willing to lock him up long term because he's such a good finisher, but he's so strong at the same time. He has that when he gets that twitch in his step and he just blows by you with his explosive first step, which might I say is still looking very good, albeit two ACL injuries. He is such a good finisher around the rim, and that just goes so much into being able to create your own shot because if he catches it and the defense is closing out on him, I bet probably it depends who's guarding him, obviously, but he's going to blow by him and he's going to get at least a chance to finish at the rim where I like him finishing at any point. And if he can continue to shoot the 3-point ball, as you said, 2 of 3 for the night, if he can do that, I mean, he seems worth the money in a situation where if we don't re-sign him, we will have limited options going forward this offseason.
Yeah, but exactly like you said, for the right price. But another underlying issue from yesterday's loss against the Pelicans was I thought Giannis looked terrible in 40 minutes. He just looked completely out of sync.
Yeah, he did not look good last night, and he even was quoted after the game saying that, especially at the end of the game when there was that when they had a chance to score after the turnover where Anthony Davis had tipped the ball and it went out of bounds, there was a very, very, very long time in between when that play happened and when the following play started. It took probably about a 3 to 4 minute review on the play, which was very clear, which is kind of egregious, to be honest, how it took that long to see something that obvious, unless it was shot clock related or score clock related. But he also said that the timeout that was taken by Prunty to advance the ball afterwards was another factor and kind of, he said, quote unquote, threw off his rhythm going into it. And I understand that's just for the last shot because he did seem rather off at it was. I mean, anytime Giannis gets a lot of fouls, as he had 5 yesterday, he really has this tough time finding rhythm.
Yeah, he does get very timid when he's in foul trouble. But like you said, the whole length of the review and all that, it really did look like it threw off a lot of the players' rhythm for sure. You know, whenever it's crunch time in these NBA games and the referees are going over to the monitor to review, it always takes a very long time. So I think that argument for Giannis being, tight after the rhythm was being thrown off, right. I definitely see that. But he was just missing a lot of the shots that he usually makes night in and night out. And defensively, he looked lost too. There were a lot of defensive lapses, which resulted in corner threes for the Pelicans. So I think this is definitely a game to forget for Giannis, but we'll just scratch it up as a dub, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, he gives us a lot of stuff to work with on every other night. So, I mean, he's definitely earned himself an off game or two here or there throughout the season. I thought John Henson played really well against Anthony Davis. He did have some times where he was really battling down there, but I mean, it took Anthony Davis 26 shots to get his 27 points, and AD didn't have his big game as usual, and it was kind of a defense by committee as Giannis took some time on him, as well as Thon and Tyler Zeller didn't even do that too bad of a job. Tyler Zeller is actually fitting in pretty well in his kind of third center role, getting those spot minutes.
Yeah, he looks like he's developed good chemistry with Giannis and a few other of the starters, but I thought Chris Middleton, for all intents and purposes, played pretty well, 8 of 16 from the floor in 38 minutes, 25 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists. He did make some poor decision-making offensively, but we've talked about this before. The Bucks aren't really employing an offensive system, and a lot of the times Chris Middleton is just getting the ball in no man's land with the clock running down, and, he's forced to take a tough shot. And he's been subject to a lot of criticism the last year and a half or so. And I think this is just ridiculous to think that the Bucks are, going to be fine without a player like Chris Middleton. If you look at him statistically, about every year since he's been with the Bucks, he's improved dramatically in every statistical category. So I think he's a very, very valuable piece to the Bucks roster, and he's definitely a cornerstone. I really don't understand the Chris Middleton hate.
No, I really don't either. I think you if you really sit down and watch the tape and watch when Chris Middleton is getting, maybe it's the end result that you're not liking to the Chris Middleton haters out there, but you need to look at where he's getting the ball and when he's getting the ball. Too many times on these missed shots that people are blowing up on are when he catches it on the sideline with maybe less than 10 seconds on the shot clock. And once he gets backing the guy down, it's really tough because he's in one-on-one. And if he's feeling it, he can make that shot. There's no question about it. But the time and situation in which he's catching it in those spots where everyone's blowing up on him, that's where the problems are.
Look, I just want to say, if you're the Bucks bring in a coach, they run a legit offensive system with a lot of screens, a lot of movement around the perimeter and high screens. I guarantee you the Bucks will see a totally different Chris Middleton.
Absolutely. I mean, and yeah, he's giving you 25 like in this, to be honest.
But if it's somehow his fault.
Yeah. Whoever, if you can blame the committee by Drew Holiday's giving up all those points, but other than that, I don't really see where you can place an individual blame in this game. But if we're talking a whole overall recap of this weekend, including Friday's game, we're not talking a lot about Friday's game because, we're feeling it too. It just losing yesterday to New Orleans takes so much momentum out of where we could be heading right now. If you beat New Orleans, you're on a 2-game winning streak, and you're going against Washington, which I don't know if you've looked at the Eastern Conference standings lately. There's about 3 games separating teams 7 through 3. So every game matters. And there's one more thing I wanted to bring up. I want to get your opinion. I was listening to NBA radio on the Sirius radio app, and they were talking about how tanking teams, especially in the Eastern Conference, are going to affect this year's playoff race. What are your thoughts on that?
So you're talking in terms of the better teams beating the tanking teams, so that'll affect the seeding. I could see that, but some of these times you look at these tanking teams and they turn out to be, one of the more scrappier teams to play, because let's say you're a team like Toronto heading into a game, let's say to play the Atlanta Hawks, whatever, for example. That's a team you're going to overlook, but like we saw, the Atlanta Hawks gave the Bucks a lot of trouble last time they played. So, it's kind of like NCAA terminology and like the 16 seed and all that, like the trap game. So you don't want to overlook them for sure, but I don't think they're going to have that much of an influence on the race. The Bucks do have the hardest schedule coming up. If you look at their remaining games this week, tomorrow against Washington, then at Detroit, and then at home versus Indiana and Philadelphia to round out this week. This could be a week that determines the Bucks' fate for the rest of the season.
Yeah. I was talking more kind of in the terms of like, so you look at your schedule, right? And you see, let's look at tomorrow's schedule, for example. You say, okay, well, the Bucks are playing the Wizards, and that's a huge game because it matters for seeding. I'm just trying to pull up the schedule here for tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Tomorrow's Tuesday. Yeah. So, for example, the Wizards are the 4 seed right now, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So let's just say we're in the Wizards' standpoint. So the Wizards wanted to catch the Cavs, who are in the 3 seed, but the Cavs play Brooklyn. And now I know the Cavs have been struggling and they could very easily have a terrible game against Brooklyn. But you look at it from Washington's perspective, and now they're thinking, well, Cleveland's going to beat Brooklyn, so we better beat Milwaukee because we're going to lose a whole game in the standings if we don't. That's what I'm kind of trying to bring up. there's so much influence coming from what's going on, and the race is so tight. I mean, it's going to be such an exciting end of the season here because it's going to come down to the last day to see who you're playing. Other than maybe Toronto and Boston are kind of little worlds ahead in 1 and 2, but that 3 through 8 is very, very, very active at this point.
It really is up for grabs. It's going to be a fun race for sure. It's definitely one of the storylines to watch in the NBA as the season goes on.
Awesome. Well, I think we're going to segue now into our Shepherd Express Milwaukee Minute, and Andrew will be the one to walk you through that.
Of course, I just wanted to give another shout out to the people over at Shepherd Express. Thank them for putting up our podcast on their website. Awesome deal we got going on with them. So for this week's Shepherd Express, head on over to shepherdexpress.com, click on the food tab, and then head on over to the tab Takeover Podcast. In this edition, they head over to the Mob Craft Brewing to check out on their collaborative beer. And this time they're checking out the solid non-fail Imperial Stout that has coffee and maple syrup. So make sure you subscribe to their podcast on iTunes and Libsyn. Thanks again to our friends over at Shepherd Express.
Yep, definitely check out the Tap Takeover podcast. Do a great job over there at the Shepherd Express, and awesome. Thank you for putting on our podcast as always. And you can subscribe to their podcast and ours on iTunes. And ours is on SoundCloud as well. Really want to get some reviews out on iTunes. I think we're going to be doing a deal maybe later this week for some tickets for some reviews on iTunes. So stay up to date with Cream City Central on that on our social media. Thanks again to our sponsors, like we said, the Shepherd Express and John E. Drain Real Estate with realty executives in the greater Milwaukee area. Check them out on Facebook or our link on our tweet we will have on our podcast, where you can check out all of the new listings going on in the greater Milwaukee area with John E. Drain Real Estate with realty executives integrity. We have 4 more games going on this week. We have the Wizards tomorrow on TNT, Pistons on Wednesday, Pacers on Friday, and 76ers on Sunday. So like Andrew said, this is the moving week. This is the Saturday. If we're talking golf, this is the moving week here for the Bucks. So it's very important. So we're got to have good success this week. You can always follow us at Cream City Central on Twitter, Instagram, or Cream City Central on Facebook. You can follow Andrew at Andrew_Goodman3, me at Dylan Piccolo 35. You could always look at our podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, and on our website, creamcitycentral.com. Andrew, any last words for the people?
Stop the Chris Middleton hate. I will not tolerate the slander.
Yep. The driver of the J Kidd bandwagon for firing is now moved over to the Chris Middleton bandwagon. So maybe we'll make some T-shirts or something to get Andrew driving the Chris Middleton.
They're already in the works.
All right. Sounds good, and we'll talk to you later. Go Bucks.
Go Bucks.